Today we're going to go ahead and get started with section 10.1. In section 10.1 we are going to review percents, fractions, and decimal numbers. So to begin with, we're going to start with a definition. Our definition is of the word percent. Okay? So percent is a ratio out of 100. It's represented by our percent symbol. In other words, our percent is a fraction with a denominator of 100. So we can also think about percents as fractions. If we think about the word percent itself, right, per cent, right, there are 100 cents in a dollar, we literally mean per 100. So as we're going through this chapter, we're going to be using a lot of different things with percents, whether we're talking about interest rates or other different things. We're definitely going to be using a lot of percents in our calculations. So before we jump right into those calculations, we're going to practice going back and forth between decimals and fractions and percents. So if we were to convert a decimal to a percent, we're going to move our decimal point 2 places to the right, which is equivalent of multiplying by 100 and then adding a percent sign. If we are converting from a fraction to a percent, we're going to change the fraction to a decimal by dividing. We're going to take our numerator divided by our denominator and then move our decimal point 2 places to the right. To convert from a percent to a decimal, we're going to drop the percent sign and then move the decimal point 2 places to the left. So in these first 3 examples, we're going to work through a few of these, going back and forth between decimals and percents, fractions and percents and decimals. Okay. So for example 1, we're going to write each decimal as a percent. Okay. When we're writing our decimals as a percent, remember that means that we are moving our decimal point 2 places to the right. So 0.19, if we move that decimal point 2 places to the right, it's going to land after that 9, and we are going to get a percentage of 19%. 0.044, we move that 2 places to the right. We're going to land between our 4s. We don't need to keep the 0 out front when we write our final answer, so we're going to get 4.4%. If we take a whole number of 3, right now we have an invisible decimal point after that 3, right? Because if we were thinking $3, we would have 3.00. Right? So we're going to move our decimal point 2 places to the right, so we're going to land after those zeros, and we're going to get 300%. So anytime we have whole numbers, we are going to be 100% or more. Okay. So for example 2, we are going to write our fractions as percents. Okay. So as we're going through and we're doing these, we're going to have 2 steps here. Our first step is going to be to divide, and then we are going to move our decimal point also 2 places to the right, just like we just did in example 1. Right, so as we're doing our division, feel free to grab a calculator. Right, and in our calculator, what we're going to type in is we are going to type in 11 divided by 20. Well, 11 divided by 20 is going to give us 0.55. Then we're going to take that decimal point and we're going to shift it 2 places, and we are going to get 55%. Right, for example B, we're going to take 15 divided by 16. That's going to give us a decimal of 0.9375. We shift our decimal point 2 places to the right. We get 93.75%. Right, 30 over 25. We're going to take 30 divided by 25. That's going to give us 1.2. We're going to shift it over 2 places, kind of like we did in example C in the previous example. We need to add a 0. We add a 0, we get 120%. Right, so when we're going from decimals to percents or fractions to percents, right, we're moving our decimal point 2 places to the right. Now, if we compare this to our next example, example 3, we're going to be converting our percents to decimals. So what that means, instead of moving our decimal places 2 places to the right, we are going to move our decimal 2 places to the left. All right, so let's start with this first one, 89%. We move 2 places. We're going to get 0.89. In general, if we don't have a number in front of our decimal point, we're going to try to put a 0 out there. It's not necessarily wrong if we leave it off, but we are going to try to make our answers look nice and consistent and put that 0 out there if we need to. 150%. Our decimal point starts on the other side of the 0. We move it back. We get 1.5 or 1.50, whichever you choose to write. 0.59%. Well, now we're moving it 2 places to the right there. So we're going to add a 0 out front, 2 zeros for the 2 place values that we've shifted, and then we're going to keep our 59. So 0.59% is 0.0059. Right, similarly with D, we're going to move our decimal point 2 places, 0 out front, the 2 zeros that we've added, the 1 0 that we had in front of that 3, and then the 3 5. So 0.35%, very, very small percentage, turns into a very, very small decimal, 0.00035. Right, for this last one, we have 1/5 of a percent. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to turn this into a decimal. Right, so in our calculator, we're going to take 1 divided by 5, and that's going to give us 0.2%. And then once we have our 0.2%, we're going to move it back 2 places. And we're going to get 0.002. So as we're working back and forth with our decimals and percents, the key thing that we want to keep in mind that we want to be using is we're thinking about our decimal place values. Again, the reason it's always 2 place values is we're thinking about a percent being out of 100, and 100 is 2 place values. So we're either moving 2 place values to the right or 2 place values to the left, depending on whether we are multiplying or dividing as we're going back and forth between our percents and decimals.